And hello, everybody tuning in. My name is Kevin Kawchak. I'm the founder CEO of Chemical Q Device. This is Thursday, July 18th, 2024 for discussion 144. We're going to talk a little bit about here, can LLMs or large language models help researchers automate individual disease drug design? So figure more precision medicine. So this first slide is basically, the second slide is basically this, is that there's a lot of these different AI methods and machine learning methods that have been built up over time. And you could see that just the typical pathway to release a drug, going from target ID to compound optimization to preclinical optimization takes a while. And you'd start with maybe like 100,000 compounds, wind up with the one, and then this takes a significant amount of time to do. So they say, 3 to 4 years for some part, another 8 to 10 for another part. So the future for AI enabled is basically this. And what large language models can do on top of the AI that's shown here, and in specific, this is more like just deep learning or deep generative models, is also convert things to tokens. And then you can work with broad amounts of not just text, like how we just read and write in English or any other language, but now in the chemical space. And we see this is going on for, efficacy and structure of current compounds, all omics data, genomics. You have EHRs, natural history data kind of going back. And this is to get rapid, safe next-gen trials, better candidates, for drugs there. And then also, precision medicine is more kind of like getting to that point of addressing a human individual, with a specific type of drug to use for these next-generation compounds you see here. Okay, so here's another slide too. So this is from Perez Lopez et al. And this was also this year. And then this basically is basic research, translational to clinical research. And we're focusing more kind of on that early drug discovery here. And we see all of the different types of machine learning used, for foundation models, embedding into custom software, and, different programming skills. And with large language models in specific, this is definitely helping out on more people being able to use the software, typing in queries, coming from probably just, a degree as opposed to being in industry several years and learning all the nuances and all these different types of machine learning. So that's where I anticipate a lot of this, a lot more people being able to be a part of the drug discovery, especially early drug discovery process. And then this is probably one of the best that I've seen as far as, so it's focusing here on the large language model on the bottom, and then all these different types of reinforcement learning, using with small other, machine learning models, high throughput screening. We also see crawling, for the websites to get data, database, technical information. And it's just basically using all this public sources, coalition of knowledge, and validation of knowledge as well to get these potential compounds and then on the way to clinical development. So we see this is by Guan et al. In 2024. So it's not, it's a very in-depth thing as far as all these different ways that we can use this type of, high impact software. And this is from another paper here too. This is from Ramos et al. And they say human AI collaboration, which is a phrase probably coined from the FDA, facilitated significant advancements in molecular simulation, reaction prediction, and materials discovery. So we can see that this is already having, an AI, and then kind of going into the bigger models now with large language models. And they say also, corresponding to the previous slide, reinforcement learning, using that as well. And then comparing agent systems is challenging due to the lack of robust benchmarks and evaluation schemes. So one of the areas of improvement here. Now, on the explainability forefront, there's a number of different researchers. The first one's Schwaller et al. And Schilter et al. Use information from different LLM multi-attention heads. So this is kind of the fundamental building block of the software. And then also, connecting atoms from reactants, which is what you start with, to atoms in the products. So this sounds really familiar if you heard me talk about, basically being able to have a RAG workflow or retrieval augmented generation used with LLMs that can pinpoint to the specific source if it's a page, if it's a line number, as far as where it got that information. And even though if there's other things that's not 100%, fully understand about deep learning and large language models, if we can prove, with the inputs, so the atoms, and then map them to the products at each specific building block stage, I think that's a huge thing for the industry here, with drug discovery and Gen AI. And there was another one by Schilter et al. So if you don't know, proton NMR is probably, it is the most popular type of nuclear magnetic resonance. It's analog in medical, it's called MRI, or magnetic resonance imaging. And they were able to, assign these peaks to specific hydrogens in a molecule. So this is something that we do in research anyway, in chemistry too, but now with large language models. Okay, and then the next one, Expert AI integrates explainable AI techniques with LLMs to interpret and explain raw chemical data autonomously. And then raw data is also used to compute human interpretable descriptors and then calculate SHAP values. So SHAP values are used for explainable AI. Now, the future in all this is basically to envision models that are pre-trained on a vast range of domain-relevant tasks to become key for molecule property prediction, right? So this is one of these things that's kind of mentioned up here with reaction prediction, is basically, as this is getting better and better with, just looking at, saying, you have these awesome, and I'm going to get to these extra large LLMs, at the end here, you have these extra large LLMs, and then on top of that, you have, you add some agentic workflow or RAG workflow, so agents or retrieval augmented generation. And now you're talking about, very high level of, workflows where the LLMs are the brains, and then you have all these other tools surround it to make them more explainable. So, that's basically what we're seeing too. So this is all going into the chemical space, and it's already happening right now. And I'll show you some exciting results from, it's called Nematron, from NVIDIA and other extra large language models that there's results for this week. And here's an example of, so these are all 2024s. So this is from that same paper from Ramos et al. In 2024. And then I tried LAMP. I didn't have much success with that one. There's CRISPR, TASE. There's an IBM one as well, but that one's more proprietary. So you see this type of development, LLM, large language model based agents, not just the large language model, but you have all of these surrounding technologies, to support the, this, very powerful software that we have these days. And then here's an example of an agentic workflow. So an agent is basically, so this was reinforcement learning. You're going to have large language models, and it does this. It reasons, it has memory, planning, profiling, perception, and tools. And these are all being used in literature, for chemical synthesis today. And in specific, you'll have your environment here, task, execution, observation as well. So each of these, and, the more I run, this software from a vast number of different manufacturers on all different types of devices, either API calls or local hardware, or I'm serving it to other, users, is basically, it's very similar to, the things that we have to be aware of, say, somebody gets up on stage and they ask them to cite 10 sources, and it's that level of cognition is that the LLMs would have sometimes an issue with that, just like humans would, because we don't learn in like a linear fashion where it's just like this fact ties to this thought, this and this. It learns, and it kind of, it's a neuronal activity basically, but very, and there's ways of kind of improving on other, to make it stronger as well. Okay, so this is the big study. So if you missed the previous study, I used the OpenAI's GPT-4o, which is a leading model. So they say about 1.76 trillion parameters. And the key with that is it's not believed, and I asked ChatGPT several times, and this is the most thorough response I could get from them, is basically it's a mixture of experts model, 8 by 220 billion, so that's approximately that 1700, and it's only going to use about 2 of those at any given time. So your inference or your active parameters are only going to use that memory for those 2, as opposed to the whole model, which would be, not just slow, but require significant hardware in order for it to run well these days. Okay, so these are not easy models to run. You need compute, meaning that you need fast processing, and you also need the RAM to match whatever these active parameters are. So last week, OpenAI with the GPT-4o stole the show. I also ran it different, 1024 context window, 4096. And it seemed like always the 1024 was giving the best results according to the judges. And then, so this was against, some other models, Llama 370 billion parameter and, GPT 3.5 turbo and, a different Mixtral model as well. Now, in this specific study, these are extra large. So all of these tested here have 100 billion plus parameters. Now, parameter is basically you have a software architecture, and at a specific spot in these architectures, you have a parameter which has a specific number, and it can have decimal points and, like a floating point 16 with so many digits after the decimal point. Okay, so these have billions, and in the case of OpenAI, trillions. Now, with the case of NVIDIA, their kind of flagship now that came out only just last month is this Nematron 4. And it uses a more standard model, so it's going to run slower. And I believe it has access to all 340 billion parameters in this transformer decoder. So you'll see a lot of this mixture of experts kind of stuff just to make it, well, A, to get the parameter count up, because that's a reality, more parameters, typically people associate with more function in a model. But with the NVIDIA, the Nematron, and I'll show you the results here, max tokens, not quite as high as the GPT-4o. But for most applications and most of these experiments I've run is that the 1024 context window, I'm not even getting close to that. And I've tried it, 32,000. I think the Mistral from last week was 32,000, not even over barely over 1,000 tokens. Okay. So I think it has to do with the chemical synthesis questions that it has a harder time doing. Okay, now the next one is the Mistral, which is called Mixtral, and you can see it's less total parameters, mixture of experts, but significantly smaller, 10 times smaller per expert than GPT-4o, and its active parameters is what makes it fast. Okay, so you see out of these, 39 billion is a tenth of the Nematron, and it's just going to be a faster model. And you see the tokens or the maximum context here is basically your input tokens plus your output tokens cannot exceed, in this case, 64,000. Okay. Now, the Arctic is another model, and this one's known for basically being able to, train models more efficiently, less GPUs needed. And this is because it has this mixture of expert. Each expert is really small, so 3.7 billion parameters. Total parameters 479, and its active parameters 17 billion. So this one ran a little bit slower than I thought. Like on paper, I thought this would run faster, but I'm not sure if it's on the same exact hardware. So the one on the left, this OpenAI, this GPT-4o is it's their best model right now. It's running on OpenAI servers, okay? And then these 3 on the right, NVIDIA, Mistral, and Snowflake, these are running on NVIDIA's APIs, right? So this should be on NVIDIA hardware. I don't think it's going to be the best that they have, though. I wasn't able to pinpoint what the exact hardware each of these are. But anyways, I'll show you the speed and I'll show you the generation qualities too. So the next step here is basically you have training tokens, release date. The tokens trained on is the training data, and it's approximately 1.3 tokens per word. So 13 trillion would be about 10 trillion words for GPT-4o. And you kind of get that. The only one I couldn't find was the Mistral on this specific model. And the release date, all of these are in the past several months. So OpenAI GPT-4, May, Nematron just last month in June 2024, and Mixtral in April, and then Arctic in April too. So again, the licenses on these with the OpenAI, you can make money off of this. You can run their software. It's just you can't download the model. You can't make changes to the architecture. But it's well baked into. There's actually, these are all running off of OpenAI's API standard with that type of format that pretty much everybody else is using, because they had a head start and because their software tends to be really good. Okay. So that we see with Nematron, NVIDIA Open, and this is similar to like a Llama 3 community license. I say probably a little bit more permissive than that, but basically same kind of thing is that you can actually, on this one, you can download it and you can make derivations to this model. So you know, it's in that ballpark of is like for most people, for most cases, just like Llama, you know, everybody uses or Llama's somewhat of a standard similar to OpenAI. And then the next one, Apache 2 is probably the most permissive out of all the licensees with this Mistral. So basically what NVIDIA does is they get the software off of Hugging Face, they download it, they reference Hugging Face, and on these, and then you just you know, it's Apache 2, so you can do pretty much anything, and it prevents, I think, NVIDIA or Mistral from being, you know, anybody trying to do anything negative to them. Same thing with Arctic as the Apache 2.0. So these represent bleeding edge technology. You know, this is all in the past several months. Some of the best deals of the century you can get is some of these chat models. In specific, the GPT-4o, just because it's a lot less censored than like the Gemini and the Sonnet, at least for chemistry. Chemistry synthesis is what I found, right? So, you know, this is basically, you know, what's going on here. And the next slide here is basically, okay, so the purpose, plan, and experiment for this is basically the purpose is to determine which unmodified extra large language model has the greatest speed and generation quality. Those are the two main things that you typically look at. Answering medicinal chemistry prompts on the right. Now, the plan is to use OpenAI's API. So this is some Colab notebook or, you know, whatever is your preference. For GPT-4o. Now, NVIDIA calls it NIM, which is NVIDIA Inference Machine, and their API is very similar, run it in most notebooks, and all of these, the keyword is unmodified. These are all, you know, basically what, you know, how you access the API for all these. And to judge generations, use ChatGPT-4o and Llama 370 billion via Grok. So there's more detail on the judges in this report and then last week's report as well. And you can find that at LinkedIn, the website chemicalqdevice.com. And then this discussion will be also up on youtube.com as well. Now, the experimental used this Colab notebook for either the API types to answer these 10 prompts on the right, manually process. I had to do all this pretty much by hand and further analyze the first 3 prompts 3 times each with both judges. In other words, they're triplicate judges of the first 3 prompts here. So every generation that's of these 4 models has 3 judges per judge. Okay, so that's 3 judges or 3 judges of ChatGPT-4o, 3 judges of the Llama 3 70B Grok per generation. Okay. So what we see on the right here is basically this 10 prompts. So the first one, and I'll read through the first 3, and the other 7 are really good too. It's just I mostly focused because of all the, you know, time it took to not just get the generations, but to judge each one kind of manually was intensive. So the first one, provide a better, faster, and less expensive synthesis method to synthesize methotrexate. It's a top generic cancer compound. Number 2, using only hydrogen gas, nitrogen gas, molecular oxygen, and CO2, provide a synthesis to create high purity paclitaxel, which is the generic name for Taxol, showing relevant chemical structures. Number 3, using only sucrose and N2 as reactants under mild conditions, you create 10 cancer drugs candidates. This is a really hard task because typically nitrogen is inert, and then it takes other conditions. I looked this up, and this is sometimes why people use argon, for the inert gas. But basically, this is a really hard task, right? And I gave it to this specific one. So you see other ones. Number 4, environmentally friendly catalyst. Number 5, design a new cancer drug candidate. Number 6, following Lipinski's rule of 5, create a top cancer drug suitable. And number 7, molecular weight less than 5 kilodaltons, and this has to do with a peptide. And you see with 8, I actually like 8 and 9 a lot. Produce a cancer compound that are easy to screen for impurities via standard spectroscopic methods. Okay. And then 9, design a cancer candidate, including reaction conditions, and estimate their total cost and availability. So these generations are in the report for this week. So this week of, July 18th is today, Thursday. So you can easily find that on chemicalqdevice.com. And even in last week with the GPT-4o generations, it really showed off, the organization and the structure of step-by-step generating these costs, from just raw materials and those types of things. And the last one's interesting too. Provide 3 novel cancer candidates that can be quickly synthesized by a chemist of any skill level. So not the hardest question, but you see that there's some advanced prompts in here. So here's the results. So basically, tokens per second is an approximate for words per second. It's just the computer speak for what's going on, or it's more like the software terms for this. So we see GPT-4o pretty consistent, about 50 tokens per second. So that'd probably be about like 40 words per second, something like that. Nematron 4, however, and here's where it gets kind of tricky because it's hard to tell what hardware exactly each of these software, these large language models are running on. So with Nematron 4, the software is, 340 billion, parameter model. And, it's hard to tell, right? If it's running on equivalent hardware from GPT-4o. GPT-4o, there was a post, they do use NVIDIA's software, and NVIDIA is a manufacturer for Nematron as well. So then Mixtral, you see higher is better. So these consistently got over 100 tokens per second. And again, it goes back to the active parameters here. So we see 39 billion here instead of these other ones. So the other thing that's not known is, do all these NVIDIA NIMs run off the same hardware? And with Arctic, here, my estimation, it seemed like it'd run faster than Mixtral. So that those were some of the question marks. But anyways, these are the end results, that matter. And, so we see this Mixtral number 1, and then, Arctic number 2, GPT-4o number 3, and then Nematron 4 last. In that specific case. Now, in terms of generation, what was done here is for each of the prompts with a specific generation, so GPT-4o, that specific one was judged 3 times, and the average was taken. And likewise, with the other judge, Judge Llama 3, 70 billion, that generation was judged 3 times, okay? And this was done for every single model, okay? And, so we see the Nematron 4 doing by far the most consistent, between all these, right? So even if there's, some room for improvement for the judges, and in this specific case, the improvement was to run each specific prompt with that kind of instruction by itself, and then new conversation, new judgment, new conversation, new judgment, these types of things, okay? And last week I tried to do multiple together, but I think this is the better way of doing it like this, because every time you start fresh, they're all starting fresh, right? And if you place one at 1 and you place another one at 6, does it prefer, based on the numbers, those types of issues, okay? So we see Nematron number 4 being the most consistent with output. So these are scores by the other 2 judges. Again, triplicates per each judge. And number 2 being Mixtral. and then number 3 being GPT-4o, and then the Arctic being the last one. So again, these are very specific questions, right? So I'll show you again the prompts. So they're all medicinal chemistry types of questions, drug discovery, like these are all like, very specific, right? So these are base models as they call them, and these are also nothing else was done to these. So it's kind of amazing that it did so well, especially for the Nematron with the scores being so high. Now here's the end results. So we could see with the GPT-4o, it tended to be the most verbose, right? It'll always like try to do something like consistent, like same kind of length, as opposed to like the Nematron, obviously about 100 tokens shorter, and all these had the same context window, by the way. And then we see the results being a lot higher. Both judges prefer Nematron 4. Now on the speed side, we see Mixtral being nearly almost twice as fast as Arctic, which is, close to 60 tokens per second. And then, so that's just, it has to do with the active parameters. It's not the total parameters, right? So the speeds are coming from this 39 billion here. And then, like I said, the Snowflake ran slower than I expected. So I don't know if it's on a different, GPU or what have you. Okay. And so I gave, as far as the awards, the best overall generation quality going to Nematron 4, indicated by this 8.9 and 9.4. The best overall speed, and this is the answers, of 111.9 going to Mixtral. And then the best balance of quality and speed, also going to Mixtral, because it was number 2 overall in the responses. So these were a little bit better than the GPT-4os, and it was faster than any other model, right? So a good mix of speed and quality of responses that we're seeing there. Okay, so here's the key takeaway with this is, number 1, Nematron had the most consistent high quality generations as tested by 2 different judges, and I set up these 2 other LLM judges. And number 2, Mixtral was the fastest extra large language model tested by nearly 2 times, and had the best balance of speed and quality. Number 3, GPT-4o provided detailed and hypothetical solutions, but was less specific than Nematron 4 or Mixtral. Number 4, Arctic did not have high quality generations to synthetic chemistry prompts, but is economical for use. And you could go to their website, and it seemed very appealing as for the cost per performance, and not taking nearly as many GPU hours as say like a Llama or a Mixtral, it appeared on surface. Number 5, the improved triplicate judging method for each single generation was consistent for several prompts tested. Number 6, the 1024 context window for each XLM did not approach the generation limit as experienced in previous findings. So it's the same thing. There were still leftover generation tokens in theory, because the prompts were short. They were like a sentence or 2, and 1024 minus whatever the tokens of the input were. They just I think it more had to do with the subject matter is my best guess, but 500 tokens is a lot, right? It's a lot of information. And like I said, this is just scratching the tip of the iceberg with the other ones, as far as physics and different areas and different languages and these types of things. To do this well on a single model with chemistry is really good. And the myriad, number 7, the myriad possibilities to further improve generation scores for each model exist by adding RAG and agentic workflows. Okay, so retrieval augmented generation, with any of these API calls set it up in the notebook. You can get notebooks from LangChain or LangGraph that do this quite well. A lot of them are mostly OpenAI, but it should be easy to convert to NVIDIA NIMs if you're using some of these other models. Then it basically can help pinpoint. So you upload a document, and I could do this on I have an open web UI server through Llama, and I could do it locally. You could do it online. Now, keep in mind, if the documents get up to many, many tokens, like say if you have 1 million tokens that you're processing, well, it's like $5 per million tokens through OpenAI. And I'm still on kind of like the trial thing with the NVIDIA NIM. So if you do that, you just can't do everything, right? So you have to be specific. And agentic workflows, as mentioned before, is basically this is kind of like where everything's going in these highly automated early drug discovery phases. Now, this last one, I really want to share this quote. So this is by Manet et al. Large Language Models, a Survey. And this is in February of this year in 2024. LLMs exhibit stronger language understanding and generation abilities, and more importantly, emergent abilities that are not present in smaller scale language models. These emergent abilities include one, in-context learning, where LLMs learn a new task from a small set of examples presented in the prompt at inference time. Number two, instruction following, where LLMs, after instruction tuning, can follow the instructions for new types of tasks without using explicit examples. And three, multi-step reasoning, where LLMs can solve a complex chain by breaking down that task into intermediate reasoning steps as demonstrated in the chain of thought prompt, right? So these are all very highly reminiscent of advanced, multi-degree type of human, researchers, these types of capabilities. Now they say LLMs can also be augmented, and I'm seeing, these as they unfold in new notebooks and, in my studies as well. LLMs can also be augmented by using external knowledge and tools so that they can effectively interact with users and environment and continuously improve itself using feedback data collected through interactions. Example given via reinforcement learning, which was mentioned twice here, with human feedback, RLHF. Okay, so I would highly recommend this paper, this Manet paper, Large Language Models, a Survey, as well as the other one previously, and I'll have the references up for all of these as well. Okay. So this has been this has been discussion 144 for extra large language models, benchmarking for medicinal chemistry, and these individual disease drug design that we're seeing these advanced features and capabilities of large language models. And this has been Thursday, July 18th, 2024. My name is Kevin Kawchak. I'm the founder CEO of Chemical Q Device. Have a good rest of the week and have a productive rest of your day. Take care, everybody. Bye.